This is a compilation of some great entitled parents and people stories. Timestamps are in the description below, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Neighbor kept parking on my property, so I had him towed. Posted by Jellikai 2020. Backstory. I'm a single mother of 2 teenage boys, and I live in a nice, quiet neighborhood at the end of a cul-de-sac. Every house on this street has a garage, and I'm the only one that has a single car and parks in my garage. Almost every house on this street is a family home with at least 3 cars, but most have more. Some will park in their driveway and some will park on the street. It's never been a problem since everyone is considerate on how they park, and no one has ever had an issue with getting in or out of the street. In addition, I tend to keep to myself. I'm not antisocial, and I wave and say hello to my neighbors when I come and go from my home, but usually when I get home, I stay home. So, I say all of this to give you an idea that I'm a homebody, and my neighbors pretty much know that when I get home, I stay home. About 6 months ago, the house to my right was sold to a larger family that consisted of dad, mom, and 3 teenagers. The day they started moving in, I made it a point to go over to the edge of the property to wave and greet them in order to welcome them to the neighborhood. They were friendly, and I was happy to have such nice people move in next door. Also note, this family used their garage for storage and thus parked their 4 cars in the driveway. I didn't know it at the time, but their youngest son was just months away from his 16th birthday. Now that you have a little information, on to the story. The players. Me is me, ND is entitled neighbor dad, NS is entitled neighbor son, and NM is entitled neighbor mom, and NP is the poor nice police officer. Today is Monday afternoon, and this story began last Tuesday. Around 6 p.m. on Tuesday, I received a knock on the door, and it was ND. Following is our conversation. "Good evening, how are you?" I talk back through the screen door and say, "We're okay. I'm sorry I can't open the door, but my youngest came home from school with a sore throat today, and so I'm not sure what's going on with him. How are you, and how can I help?" "Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope it isn't anything serious. We're okay. My son just turned 16 a few weeks ago, and I'm sure you saw the new truck we bought him." Yes, I did. It's such a pretty truck and big. Does he like it?" "Yes, he does. It's what he wanted, so we got it for him. It is very big, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about." Let's take a brief pause here and understand that when I say this truck is very big, it is very big. It's an F-350. I personally think it's too much of a vehicle for a kid learning to drive, but it's not my money, so to each their own. "I don't understand." "We've been having complaints from some of the other neighbors that his truck is so big that they can't get around it when they are driving through, and we're afraid that it might get sideswiped if he continues to park it in the street." "Yeah, I've had some intense moments trying to get around it myself, but I'm sure he'll get better at parking as he gets more experienced. I'm not sure what this has to do with me. I haven't complained." "Oh, I know you haven't complained, which is why I was going to ask if he could use your driveway to park since you don't use it." I'm very stunned at this and say, I do use my driveway when I leave and come home. I can't get to my garage without using my driveway. Besides, I have issues with depth perception, and your son's truck is so big, it will take up most of my driveway, and I don't want to be responsible for any damage that might happen while it's on my property." "Well, we'll make sure that he parks it so that it will allow you to come and go without any issues." "That isn't possible. The only way he can park to allow me to get around him is if he parks it halfway on my lawn, and that wouldn't work because then he would damage my lawn. If you're concerned about his truck getting damaged, then why don't you let him park in your driveway, and then one of your other smaller cars can park in the street?" "We've already discussed that, and we would have to park 2 cars in the street in order for him to use the driveway. It would be very easy for him to park in your driveway, and I can assure you that it will not be an inconvenience to you. You don't even use your driveway." "I'm sorry, but the answer is no. I'm not going to be responsible for his vehicle on my property, and I need to be able to come and go without worrying about someone else's property." The entitled dad, very upset at this point, says, "You're not being very neighborly. I thought you were a nice woman. You don't use your driveway, and this would benefit the whole neighborhood." I'm losing my temper at this point and say, Listen, I told you no, and I do use my driveway every time I pull into my garage and every time I leave. I'm sorry you don't have enough parking for all your vehicles. I'm sure it's frustrating, but it's not my problem that you decided to buy a vehicle that didn't fit your property. Now, while I also find it irritating to try and navigate the road with that truck in the way, it is public parking, and so I deal with it. I will not have anyone else's vehicle parking on my property. Now, if you don't mind, I have a sick kid and I need to get back to him. Have a good day." With that, I closed the door and then looked out the peephole and saw him give me the bird before he turned to leave. I just shook my head and had to take a moment to understand that I actually just had that conversation. I then loaded my son up in the car and left to take him to minor emergency to get him checked out. All tests came back negative, and I was told he probably had a run-of-the-mill virus and to keep him home and do self-care. I was told to bring him in if he got worse, but not to worry. I went to work the next day and told my coworkers the story of my neighbor's request, and they were shocked. I had one coworker suggest that I send an email to my HOA to explain what happened just to get it on record because it was such an odd request. I took her advice and typed up an email that day when I was at lunch, and I sent it. For those who want to know, it was just an FYI email, not a complaint email. It basically stated that my neighbor made a request to park on my property, and when I declined, he got mad at me and I wanted it on record just in case anything ever happens. So very glad I did. So, Friday comes and my youngest son has been homesick since Tuesday afternoon. When I got home Friday evening, I checked him and he'd begun to run a fever and was complaining of several other things. I'd been doing self-care with him since Tuesday and he didn't appear to be getting any better. Around 7 p.m., I decided to take him back to minor emergency and loaded him up in the car. I opened my garage door, and I was absolutely shocked to see that very big F-350 sitting in my driveway, blocking me. I can't describe to you how angry I was to see that vehicle sitting there. Now, before anyone starts asking me how I didn't know it was in my driveway, it's because my street is very busy and cars are coming and going all the time. Unless someone knocks on my door, I don't bother watching every vehicle that drives up and down the street. The only window that can see my driveway are the ones in my kitchen, and I keep those curtains drawn and never look out of them. So, I get out of my car and stomp over to my neighbor's house and bang on their door. Entitled Mom answers the door, and this is the conversation. Irritated and kind of angry, she says, "Can I help you? You're interrupting our dinner. Your son is parked in my driveway after I told your husband he couldn't. I need to take my son to minor emergency, and that truck is blocking me in." It's at this time the entitled dad walks up behind the entitled mom and proceeds to talk. "He isn't blocking you in. You can get around him." "No, I can't. You need to move that truck or I'm going to call the police and a tow truck. I need to get my son in to see a doctor." Entitled dad turns to call for his son and then turns back to me. "He's not blocking you, but I will have him move it." "It doesn't matter whether you believe he's blocking me in or not. He is not allowed to park in my driveway. No one is allowed to park in my driveway, and if I find an unauthorized vehicle parked in my driveway again, I'm not going to bother to knock on your door. I'm going to have it towed." It was at this time I saw the son arrive at the door with his keys in his hands, and I turned to leave and head to my car to wait for him to move it, and I heard him call me that famous B word every woman's heard at least once in her life. I ignored him and headed to my car and watched as he got in, and after some effort, finally was able to back out of my driveway and parked his truck in the street a little way down the road. I was able to leave and take my son to minor emergency, where, as we waited for several hours to be seen, I shot off another email to my HOA about what just happened. I want to advise the HOA had already responded the day before that they received my email, made note of it, and advised my property was on my own and I could give or deny access to it as I wish. It was this email string that I responded to while waiting for my kid to be seen. Again, all tests administered to my son came back negative, and I was told it was a run-of-the-mill virus and he would be fine. The virus just had to run its course. I took him home and called it a day. Saturday evening, my oldest started complaining of a sore throat, and I was starting to feel poorly myself. My youngest appeared to be getting better, so I figured that whatever he had, we were getting, so we stayed in all day Saturday and Sunday. Sunday evening at about 5:30, my oldest son spiked a fever, and while it came down a little, it didn't come down enough, so I loaded him in the car and off to minor emergency we went. The only one I could find that was open on Sunday at this time was on the other side of town, so I had to drive 20 minutes just to get there, and we ended up waiting for 3 hours to just get in the door, and then another 45 minutes till we saw the doctor. After a few more hours and all of his tests come back negative, the doctor did state that she could hear some wheezing in his lungs, and so she prescribed an inhaler for him to help him, but basically told me the same thing, that he has a run-of-the-mill virus and to let it run its course. I had to drive even further to the only 24-hour pharmacy available to pick up the inhaler, and we did not get back to the house until almost midnight. Let me set the scene for you. My son is half asleep in the passenger seat and complaining that he just wants to go home, and I'm exhausted and feeling drained and having coughing fits myself. I'm just looking forward to going to bed when I round the corner and saw that truck sitting in my driveway. I couldn't even pull in because he was blocking me, and I also noticed that he was parked partially on my lawn. I was so mad that I could hardly see straight. I Googled and found a 24-hour tow truck service and explained that I had an unauthorized vehicle on my property that I needed towing. The woman said it would be about 30 minutes before they could get a truck there, and I said that was fine. In the meantime, I walked my kid to the house and put him to bed, and then quickly went outside and took a picture from the street to show how much of the driveway he was taking and that he was also parked on my lawn. I couldn't understand why they would park in my driveway again after I had told them no, and the only thing I could come up with is that since there had been no activity at my house for hours, that my neighbors probably assumed I was in for the night and wouldn't notice the truck in my driveway. And this is pure speculation, but it's normal for me to be in for the night, especially after 6 p.m. I don't know if they missed me leaving or just saw me leave, but figured I was home, but it doesn't really matter because I told them they couldn't park on my property. It was about 12:30 a.m. when the tow truck arrived, and I half expected my neighbors to come running, but there wasn't any activity from them, and the driver left with the truck without incident. I went in, shot off another email to my HOA, along with pictures and an explanation that I had towed the vehicle, and then went to bed. At 6 a.m. this morning, I woke up to someone banging loudly and rapidly on my door. I didn't have to look. I knew who it was. I grabbed my phone, hit the video record button. Before I opened the door, I looked through the peephole and saw Entitled Dad and his son at my door. I opened the door, and following is the conversation. Very angry and yelling, Entitled Dad says, "Where is the truck?" Me, as calmly as I could state while coughing, "It was towed. You can call such and such company to make arrangements to get it back." "You didn't have the right to tow it. You're going to pay to get it back." "I had every right to tow an unauthorized vehicle on my property. I told you not to park on my property, and you did it anyways. It blocked me from getting in my driveway last night. I told you I was going to have it towed after the last time you parked without my permission, and I won't be paying anything to get it back. You stole my truck, you F&B, and I'm calling the police. I'm going to sue you." Me, having enough of this, "Go ahead. In the meantime, I'm sick, and I'm going back to bed." I closed the door and stood there for a moment. I looked out the peephole and they were still there. Entitled Dad started banging and was also ringing my doorbell non-stop. He knocked and rang my doorbell for another 4 minutes before he gave up. I'm still recording all of this, and I didn't turn off the video until he was gone. I turned and saw my kids standing there. The noise had gotten them up, and I just advised that if they were still feeling ill, to just go back to bed because that's where I was going. Now, I will honestly say that I didn't think he would call the police, but he did. It was about a half an hour, and I really wasn't looking at the clock, that I heard a doorbell ring. I got up and I looked through the peephole, and a police officer was there. I opened the door and had the following conversation. "Good morning, ma'am. Sorry to bother you, but we had a report from your neighbor. He's stating that you stole his son's truck by having it towed from the street, and we need to talk to you about this issue." Good morning, officer. My neighbor's only telling you half the story. I had his truck towed this morning from my driveway when I returned home from minor emergency. I couldn't get into my driveway, and I've already told him twice that him and his family can't park on my property. This issue started last week, and I have emails to my HOA, pictures of his truck parked in my driveway this morning, and a video of my neighbor's visit this morning where he called me names and told me he was going to sue me and call the police. I can show you if you'd like. Yes, so you're saying that the truck in question was on your property without your permission and that you had it towed? Yes, last Tuesday he asked if I would allow his son to park in my driveway. I told him no, and he got mad and flipped me off before leaving. Then Friday evening, when I was leaving, I discovered his son had parked in my driveway and I couldn't leave my garage. I went over and demanded that they move the vehicle, and I told them at that time that I would have their truck towed if they parked on my property again. I came home late this morning and the truck was in my driveway, so I had it towed. I just want to confirm that you're saying that it wasn't parked on the street, but in your driveway, and you have proof of this? Yes, sir. If you'll give me a minute, I'll print off the emails that I sent to the HOA that documents the issues, and I'll also show you the picture and the video as well. With this, the police officer said that he would wait for me to print everything off. Once I got the emails printed, I then returned to the door, opened my Photos app to the officer to show the truck in my driveway, time-stamped, handed my phone and printed emails to him. After looking at the photo where you could clearly see my house in the background, the truck blocking the entrance, and that it was partially on my lawn, the officer then read the printouts. He handed my phone back to me and asked me to open the video that I had referenced while he went over to the lawn to look. I watched him look at the area and then take a few photos. I could see my neighbor and his whole family standing in their driveway, watching me and the police officer. Police officer returned and I handed him back my phone with the video ready, and he watched it. After he finished watching the video, we had the following exchange. "I'm going to need a copy of that photo and video for my file. If I provided you with an email, would you be able to send it to me?" "Yes, sir, no problem." I have enough information for my files to determine that the vehicle was not on public property and was, in fact, on your property. I've made a note that you did not give permission for the vehicle to be parked on the property. Based on the emails you gave me with the dates and time, it appears you did, in fact, advise your neighbor not to park on your property. Would you like to file a trespassing report for this incident? Oh, absolutely. I can see you're not feeling well. You can either file with me now or you can go online. He gets his business card out, writes on it, and then hands it to me. Here's my business card with my email address that you need to use to send me your photo and video, and the case number is on the card as well. Do you want to file with me now? Honestly, I'm exhausted and I'd prefer to file online later. Okay, reference this case number when you email your evidence and file the online report. Also reference my name in on the report. One more thing. I saw in the video where the entitled dad stated he was going to sue you for having the truck towed. He can sue you if he wants, and I would advise that you keep all of the evidence you provided me with today along with the case number I just gave you. Give it a few days and you can request a copy of the report, and you'll want to keep that as well. If you decide to file an online report, you'll need to keep a copy of that as well. I'm going to go talk to the father now, and sorry to have bothered you. Thank you, officer. Look, I'm sorry that you had to come out. Have a good day, ma'am. Get some rest. With that, I closed the door and went back to bed. However, I am so mad that I didn't get any sleep. A few hours ago, I sent off my photo, video, and another copy of the HOA emails to the email address the police officer gave me, and then saved all of that information just in case. I also filed a trespassing report online. I then sat down and started typing this story. Not sure where this is going to go, but I am going to see it through. I know that I'm going to get a lot of pushback from people saying that I should have just knocked on their door and had them move the truck, but I feel that I was right to have the truck towed. I'd already told them twice not to park on my property, and it didn't stop. So this was the consequence. I'll post an update later if there's anything that comes in my report, or if the dad does actually follow up on his threat and sue me. My 15-year-old niece keeps giving me a snobby attitude and won't stop complaining about everything. Nothing is good enough for her, and it's going to be a very long 2 weeks. Posted by Incredible Way 4826. My niece is staying with me until September 18th because her parents left for their vacation to Reykjavik yesterday. She flew in from San Diego yesterday morning, and it's been nothing but heck. I live in Colorado, by the way. She keeps non-stop complaining about how cold it is here, as if I have any control of the weather. When she first got to my house, she said, "Do I really have to stay in this?" before even entering. I live in a townhouse. She was upset there's no pool and was like, "Why don't you have a pool?" Look, I know you're poor, but everyone should have a pool. My car isn't as nice as her parents' cars, and she keeps complaining how run down it is, and she's scared it's going to fall apart. I drive a 2016 Honda Accord. There's nothing wrong with it. It's kept clean. Her dad drives an Audi, and her stepmom drives a Maserati. She also keeps making videos around my house laughing at all my furniture, the way the house looks, my car, and so on. She asked if I got my furniture at IKEA because it looks cheap and laughed. She's complaining because there's carpet throughout the house and only poor people have that, and the bathrooms have tile floors and not marble, and that she has to shower in a tub shower with a shower curtain. At her house, it's a stand-up shower with marble walls and there's a glass door. I don't have stand-up showers. She's also mad there's no sauna in the bathroom. She said straight to my face, "I can't believe I have to stay in this piece of crap until my parents get back," and then walked outside and slammed the door and was texting someone, probably her dad. She's very close to him. As of today, my guest bedroom already has stuff out everywhere. The blankets I'd originally had on the bed, along with the pillows, got thrown into the hallway and replaced with ones she brought. She has clothes all over the floor. She has a few dishes with half-eaten food sitting on the floor, and I told her yesterday no eating or drinking upstairs. She's using the dresser as a vanity and left all of her makeup and used makeup wipes out everywhere. She said, "If I want the room clean, I can do it myself or hire a maid," and then she laughed and said, "Oh wait, I forgot you're too poor for that." I ordered takeout last night from a local restaurant, and she made fun of the menu because the prices were cheap. $25 for a burger is cheap? And she got the $80 filet mignon dinner and threw most of it out because it tasted weird and she's not that hungry. Her dad sent me $650 to feed her and take her to do whatever, so that came from that money. Today, we went to eat at Outback Steakhouse for lunch, and she refused to eat any of her food. She said it looked weird. She said her dad would never take her to a dump like this restaurant. Then she kept complaining that she was hungry after we left, and that I'm a terrible person for making her starve and wasting her time making her sit there. We also went furniture shopping because her dad wants to buy her a new bedroom set for her 16th birthday next month, along with her trip to Hawaii. She's being very picky, and he wanted me to check out the prices of places around here, see if she likes anything, and get back to him on it. He said that she has a budget of $8,000 total for her bedroom. She wants either these upholster princess bed frames or these mirror bed frames, which are pricey. It's around $3,000 to $5,000 for the ones that she likes, and that's just for the bed frame by itself. She also wants a vanity, a bench, nightstand, chandelier, and a dresser with it, and have it all match the bed. I tried showing her the cheaper options, and she screamed at me in the store that I have no taste and that it's her bedroom furniture to stay the F out of it. She told me to go back to the car and wait because I'm annoying her. I was about ready to leave her there, honestly. She then wanted to go clothes shopping and knows her dad sent me money. I said, you can go get an outfit, meaning one. You still need food from the grocery store. She was not happy about that and told me to stop being a cheap witch with her dad's money. She was adamant about getting this one dress and a pair of heels that was $230. That's less money she has to spend on groceries and other fun things. She knows this and still went with the purchase. She wanted me to buy food for her from Whole Foods and use some of my money if I run out of money her dad gave. I was going to buy her own groceries because she's a very picky eater. I suggested a local grocery store because it's cheaper and she can get more food. She started swearing at me and calling me names, so we went home instead. She ignored me the rest of the car ride and was texting someone. She got out of the car and started crying, saying she misses her dad and she hates me. She hates my house, it's so embarrassing and trashy. She wishes she could be on vacation with her dad, and it's not fair she has to stay with me, and then she ran into the house crying. She keeps yelling at me to F off and stop talking to her, to go get hit by a car, that I'm annoying, go away, and blah blah, whenever I say anything to her. I was eating a sandwich earlier, around almost 4 p.m., and she came downstairs and said, nice to see you feed your fat face while I starve. You're such a selfish witch, you know that I hope you choke one in and die, and rolled her eyes and went back upstairs. I ordered pizza for dinner, and she started crying at the table that she misses her dad. I asked if she called him and talked to him today, and she said in a rude tone, what do you think? And rolled her eyes. Then she was complaining about how gross the pizza was and got up and took the box and threw it in the garbage. She then told me to go to a gym and lose weight and that I'm fat and disgusting and went outside. She also just took a super long shower and said she's going to keep doing it every day since it's so cold here, and if I don't like it, tough, because she doesn't like being cold or being here. She swore at me for not turning on the heat in the house. It's not cold enough to turn the heat on, in my opinion. I usually don't start doing that until the end of October, beginning of November, when the highs are only in the 50s. Whew, it's going to be a very long 2 weeks. She goes to a private school, and they're doing online school again this year. Her first day is September 7th, and she's already telling me that I can't force her to log in and do her schoolwork, that she doesn't care about it. She's right, I can't. But I don't want to be blamed for her being tardy. I know her dad will be pretty ticked since he's paying for her to go there. Hey look, as a dad myself, this child, I would do something about it. I don't know what I'd do. I would talk to the dad. I would do something. It sounds like some of the comments are saying that this is a cry for help. Something's got to be done. This is not even right. Entitled parent demands a 50% discount after a very minor inconvenience. Posted by Zulva AZ. Before I start, I want to preface and say that I have high-functioning ASD, which is autism. Some of my social skills are limited, but I try to work my way around it and being as social as I can. So that's why you don't see a lot of conversation in this post compared to my prior post here. That, and my work surprisingly doesn't have many Karens running around given our location. We're smack dab in the middle of a retirement community, but we're the only store for the western side of my state. I thought my entitled parent stories would end with my now prior neighbor, but alas, entitlement has hit my work. I work for a hardware store in the US as what they call a customer sales associate. I'm one of 6 CSAs who are tasked to work in our paint department within the days. Out of those 6, I volunteered to do closing hours. I'm a night owl, so I usually don't wake up till around 1 or 2 p.m. Tonight was a quiet night for me and the closer for our sister department until I had 2 women, who I can assume are mother and daughter, approach my paint desk with some very worried and irritated expressions. I walk by and ask how they're doing and what I can help them with. The mother, mid-60s, explained that she returned her paint due to it having the consistency of jelly. I get confused and I grab the can from our return to manufacturer cart so I can examine and try to diagnose it. Lo and behold, they were right. It was like jelly. I asked them the usual questions about storage and use, and I saw no clues in how it could have reached this state in their home. I then referenced about our freight and how sometimes stuff like this happens. I explained to them that I will remake the paint and even discount it with the manager being notified. As I'm toiling through the list of assistant managers and department supervisors on the radio apps for the inventory phones, one of my assistant managers walks by with his lunch and dinner, and I catch him and ask if he could spare 5 seconds to look at the paint to confirm a discount. He says sure, and examines the paint as I'm citing why it was returned and the customers who wanted it replaced. He said to discount it by 20%, which is huge given we only discount paint by $2 to $5 depending on the issue. This $40 paint was now $31, but I decided to reduce it to $30 to round it out. Fast forward, the two arrive and I have this conversation. The mother is the entitled parent. Is it ready? Yep, it is. I spoke to my manager and I told them about the paint and they said to discount it by 20%, but I decided to discount you a little more. You mean to tell me that you discounted by 20% because of my troubles? This is ridiculous and you know it. I'm sorry, but I'm following what my manager had ordered me to do. How old are you? 21. I'm in my 60s, and you think you would have discounted me to 50% because I had to paint it? It was clear she didn't, as she may have likely hired someone to do it, but either way it was a frustrating moment. Unfortunately, no ma'am, though I'm terribly sorry about the issue with your old can, but I will not discount it further as my manager had requested me to discount it by 20%, and I even gave you a little more than 20%. The entitled parent is then ticked and asked to speak to our manager that discounted it. I explained that he's out to lunch and is the only one to know in our department very well. She asked if I could interrupt him, and I also said no because of company policy. She then asked for a list of all the managers, and it was at this point that I put my foot down and said no. They then walked off to check out, swearing to call a manager. After that, I went over to customer service with the old can to return it. A good friend of mine for customer service actually asked me about the two women, and I explained to her my side of the story. She said she also had an interaction with that entitled parent prior to her coming over to my paint desk. My opinion is that if you're going to give someone a discount as a worker, more than going above and beyond, you should be respectful of that and thankful because, as I've read before in other stories, you just might get screwed over and have the discount taken from you. Entitled Mom asked to try my shoes on, posted by Diana K. I have a pair of slipper backless check Vans that my sister gave me. I love these things. I get a lot of compliments about them. I was standing in line to buy some soda and snacks when someone taps me on the shoulder. It was a middle-aged woman and her 16-year-old daughter. Excuse me, I love your shoes. Where'd you get them? Well, I got them from my sister. I'm not sure how old they are. You could probably look online for them. What size shoe do you wear? A 9. Hey, Evelyn, try these shoes on and see if you like them. She says, what shoes? The mom says, the shoes this girl has on. Try them on to see if you like them, and then we can order them offline. I say that I am not going to let you try on my shoes. That's a weird thing to ask a stranger. Yeah, no, Mom. That was really weird to even think about. Good luck with the shoe hunt, I guess. I turn around to put my items on the belt, and the entitled mom taps me on the shoulder again. It is not weird. She could have just slipped them on quickly and no one would have known differently. So you are being rude. You could have said no without being rude. Jeez. Look, you don't ask a stranger to take their shoes off so you can put your feet in them. It was a weird thing to ask and even your kid agreed. So stop touching me and don't ask people stuff like that again. The entitled mom says that it was not weird, but the daughter says that it was weird. I quickly paid and left before I could hear what else entitled mom might say. They had a big cart of stuff, so luckily they didn't follow me into the parking lot to discuss it more. Poor Evelyn with a mom like that. Yeah, I've never once in my 32 years of life had someone ask me to try my shoes on in the middle of the store, since there are plenty of other shoes that if you go to a shoe shop that you can try on, and it's not nearly as weird, so don't do it. Entitled mother tried to steal my little sister's ice cream, posted by Vexlam. Hi y'all, this happened about 2 weeks ago while we were on a trip, and I forgot about it until my older sister told me about it. OMG, it is crazy. So we just finished eating our lunch, around 4 p.m. Yes, it's basically dinner, but we call it lunch. We only eat twice a day, breakfast and lunch, and then at nighttime, we get things like fruit for health problems for my little sister. She had so many cavities, and so we gave her a ban on sugar. So, we were thinking that ice cream would be nice, and we saw that there was this old-fashioned ice cream place which had sugar-free vanilla ice cream. We entered the place, and I must say, paying $15 for a cone and 1 scoop is very expensive. Usually, it's like $3 for them, but here, it's much higher. Anyways, this place was quite popular, so it had a line. It took us around 10 minutes of waiting just to get into the small shop, and around 5 minutes extra of waiting inside till we actually got to the counter. While waiting, there was this very polite kid who was playing rock, paper, scissors with my little sister. Sister's 5, and he looked around 6 or 7 years old. He was very talkative, but also very kind, and even pretended to lose when my little sister lost in a game. Next to this kid was the entitled mother, who was on the phone with her loud voice, sort of lecturing someone, and she had this bossy attitude. Anyways, we get to the counter, and I always go for the more expensive items because, hey, why not? I got the hot fudge brownie sundae, and oh, it was bomb, but it was expensive at $25. Anyways, we finish ordering. My mom and my dad order a banana boat, little sister orders a small 1-scoop cone of ice cream, and my older sister ordered the same as me. In the shop, there were 2 sections. Section 1 was where you ordered, and Section 2 is where you wait and you get your ice cream. We finish and go to Section 2, where entitled mother starts ordering. I don't know what she was thinking when she entered the store, but when she saw the prices, she flipped and she yelled at the cashier, yelled at her son for choosing the most expensive place. Basically, a Karen flip over. Little sister saw this, and by the way, she's really shy when she meets a person, so she hides behind my mom. Entitled mother saw us and comes over to us and says that her child wants to get the same thing as my little sister, and that she said that he had too much ice cream and that we should give my little sister ice cream to the boy. The nice kid was turning red and kept telling his mom that it's okay that he doesn't want ice cream anymore, but his mom still tries to talk to us about giving my little sister's ice cream to her. The front desk guy who gives the ice cream gave my little sister ice cream and told her that the rest will be ready in a second. Meanwhile, the manager is talking to the woman, telling her to either order politely and stop bothering us or to get out of the store. She's yelling at him that it's a free country and that she can do anything she wants. She sees the ice cream in my hands and says, "Thank you," while trying to grab it from my hands. I forgot to mention that I'm 5'6", and this woman looked like about 4'11" at max, so I easily just put my ice cream up, and even she tried to jump and grab it. She looks at me and calls me a demon and said that I wasn't raised properly. I told her that her son had more manners than she did, and that's when she broke out yelling and screaming, falling to the ground. Oh, he hurt me. But the thing is, no one's buying it. They're all kind of laughing at her. She gets embarrassed and leaves the store while calling her son's name out. The manager gave the nice kid a small hard candy and told him to keep being a good boy. This is where we never see entitled mother again. The manager apologizes, and guesses what? We get the bill 50% off. My dad was dancing while he saw the 50% off on screen. In the end, we got 50% ice cream, and I loved it. To be honest, I think the price is worth the ice cream. Usually for an entitled parent story, the entitled parent would come back and make another problem, but sadly in our story, entitled mother gave up and went embarrassed out of the shop. I hope the nice kid never becomes like his mom and stays being the nice kid that he is. This is Fits in the Baby Pool by Top Musician 7369. Okay, so this story takes place about 12 years ago. I was a manager lifeguard at a very rich neighborhood in Houston off of I-45 North. Seriously, there wasn't a house under $1 million in this whole neighborhood. Well, for those of you that don't know, summer in southeast Texas is hurricane and tropical storm season. So this particular day, a normal day of about 115 degrees Fahrenheit, the pool was rather full. In this neighborhood, there were actually 2 pools, one in front and one in back. The one in back, where I was with 4 other lifeguards, was for the kids. Now, there's a pool that goes up to about 4 feet and a separate pool divided by a water wall as the baby pool. The baby pool had a beach entrance down into it. Well, the sky was pitch black, so all the guards were watching the sky pretty closely as we scanned the pool, checking for lightning, listening for thunder. Then, there was thunder. So the rule is for every thunderclap, the pool is closed for 20 minutes. If you're 19 minutes in and it thunders, time restarts. Simple. Well, there's an iron gate on wheels that separates the pool area from the splash pad area where the kids could run through the water and whatnot. This gate was closed when everyone moved over to the splash pad to prevent the little ones from going over there. So I decided to be nice since it was only thundered once and let the kids play while the pool was closed. I was never nice again. So all of us guards were watching the kids play as we sat at a table directly across from where the kids were. Everything was going fine. Well, there was one man, we'll call him Mr. Karen, who was a regular with his wife and 2 little boys, about 4 and 6. 2 of the best behaved kids I ever dealt with. Never said a word to them about anything. Well, Mr. Karen was pacing back and forth along the outside of the splash pad talking to himself, like he was rehearsing something. All of the guards were like, what the heck is he doing? We watch him do this for nearly a full 10 minutes before he walks up to the temp guard table and he says with the most serious expression on his face, "So, exactly what part of thunder did you hear?" Yes, he really said that verbatim, y'all. And the other manager, who had just come back from his last tour in Afghanistan, said, the thunder part, sir? One of the other guards, a 17-year-old kid, dropped his face into his hand and very lightly chuckled. This grown man, 30 to 35 years old, looked at this high school kid and said, "You think that was funny?" The 17-year-old said, "Yeah, I thought that was really funny." Mr. Karen said, "Why don't we step outside of these gates and I'll show you something funny?" Army at that point stands up to his full 6-foot 4-inch frame and said, "I'm sorry, sir, I can't have you threatening my lifeguards. I'm going to have to ask you to leave now." Mr. Karen looks at us for a moment before he turns around and quite literally stomps over the iron gate, pulls it open as hard as he could, stomps into the baby pool, and by now everyone, kids, adults, his wife, are watching this display, and he throws himself down into the water, starts flailing his arms and kicking his legs and screaming at the top of his lungs, "I'm not gonna leave, you can't make me leave!" Army, at this point, instructed another guard to call the cops. When the cops got there, he was still throwing a fit in the baby pool, and the cops had told him that he was criminally trespassing and that he could either leave on his own or they would take him out in cuffs. He chose to leave on his own. I actually have a follow-up story to this one that occurred a few days later if anyone is interested. This is one of the richest neighborhoods I ever guarded in, and the only one that by the end of the summer, all the guards knew the cops on a first-name basis. It was absolutely ridiculous. Fits in the baby pool, part 2. Okay, so by popular demand, here's part 2 of the Mr. Karen story, starring Mrs. Karen. So I don't think I mentioned that after Mr. Karen left the pool, he was banned for the remainder of the summer. Not the kids, not the wife, just him. So a few days after part 1, Mrs. Karen and the 2 little boys come to the pool. The 17-year-old from the previous story is my head guard, and at the time when they showed up, he was checking pool tags. 17-year-old is unsure if she's allowed in because of what happened with her husband and says, "I'm standing not too far away, so I heard him clearly. 1 second, ma'am, let me make sure you can come in." He turns and walks about 3 steps toward me when I told him that she and the kids were good to come in. 17-year-old turns immediately back around and let them in the gate. The kids go into the water and Mrs. Karen sits next to the baby pool on one of the lawn chairs and pulls out her phone. Now, I'm doing chemical checks and backwashing and making sure my guards have gotten their breaks, so I'm not paying any mind to her. She's there about 15 minutes and takes the kids and quietly leaves. Still don't think anything of it. About 10 minutes later, my supervisor comes barreling into the pool like the pee-off Marine he is and starts laying into me. He's ticked and I'm confused. Finally, I'm like, whoa, you don't need to yell at me. What's going on? We are in the guard shack, which isn't a shack at this neighborhood. So supervisor tells me that the office got a call from Mrs. Karen stating that not only did we not let her and her kids into the pool, but both 17-year-old and myself cussed her out and was very rude. So now I'm peed because what, right? So I tell supervisor what happened and told him to go check the cameras if he didn't believe me, that she called the office poolside. So he did go check the cameras, saw I was telling the truth, and then Mrs. Karen also got banned for the rest of the summer. Not as exciting as the first one, but still absolutely ridiculous. I felt bad for the kids because, as I said in the other post, these were 2 very well-behaved kids and they didn't get to swim for the rest of the summer. As I said earlier, man, dads are supposed to embarrass their kids, but not like this. Moms, dads, come on, hold yourself accountable. What you do, your kids see and everybody else sees too. You're responsible for your behavior. Don't do this. My daughter invited her 8-year-old friend to swim in our new pool, and the friend brings her toddler sister along with the swimsuit on. I told the friend's sister she could swim too if the mom comes to watch her and sends her home with that message. Entitled Mom Sends Both Back Again, repeatedly. This is by Nick Knox. So let me tell y'all about how this entitled mom tried to have me be her free babysitter and lifeguard. We just got one of those above ground pools that you set up yourself that's 4 feet deep and 14 feet round. We spent the majority of 2 days prepping and filling it and letting it warm. Finally, yesterday, it was ready, and my daughter asked if she could invite a little girl that she's semi-friendly with from down the street to come swim with her. Since they're 8, they're tall enough to stand with their heads above water, and I said, okay. Well, her little friend brought her toddler sister, who is probably on the younger side of 2. Definitely too small to stand with the head above water. Well, I tell her friend that the little sister can't get in the water unless her mom is here to watch her, and then I send her home with that message. They both come back, and she says, Mom says she's fine in her float, and I can watch her. And I said, no, it's not fine. I don't think an 8-year-old is responsible enough to watch a toddler in a pool, and I'm not going to be the one watching her either. You need to tell your mom either she comes to watch your little sister or she is not getting in the pool. They both go home and then both come back. At this point, I am livid and walk back to their house with them and pound on the door. No answer. I keep knocking, and then the garage door starts to open with this woman backing her car out. I quickly went and stood at the end of the driveway with all the kids in tow, both of hers and both of mine. She gets out of her car all PO'd and asks me what my problem is. I tell her my problem is that I'm not her babysitter and that I am definitely not going to be responsible for keeping her baby from drowning in my swimming pool on my property. She then proceeds to start baby talking her own kids, saying, I'm so sorry, babies. The mean lady isn't going to let you swim. I'm so sorry, princesses. And on and on. Of course, the toddler burst into tears, and then the entitled mom screams at me, Look what you've done! You've made her cry and ruined her day. I hope you're proud of yourself. She then snatches up the little sister who's screaming and tosses her in the car and screams at her friend to get in too. Friend is red in the face and you can tell she is so embarrassed and just mumbles sorry while climbing in the car. Entitled mom then proceeds to peel out of her driveway and then we walk back home. Jerk. Since it seems to be assumed, I was not leaving the kids unattended. I was right beside the pool doing yard work and planned on continuing once all the kids were in the pool. I did not want to watch a small toddler in the pool as she would require extreme supervision, like sitting and staring directly at her kind of supervision. Also, on top of that, my rule was refused when I asked politely the first time and demanded a second time, and then this woman tried to leave. After knowing, I said no. For anyone who's saying, well, you could have just watched her. No, I couldn't. I didn't want to, and I don't need a reason not to be a free babysitter for a tiny toddler that I have literally never met. Okay, so as a dad, your kid's life and the babysitting is very important. You need to have all of your ducks in a row, so to speak, everything laid out, where you're going, when you're going to be back, all of that, contact information, knowing what's going on, everything, and give them a little bit of freedom, but not like this. This lady needed to confirm what was going on and not just drop her kid off at the pool, pun kind of intended there, with this lady. Entitled parent yells at me for getting her kid wet at the pool? Posted by Desert Storm 1157. So I live in Texas, and in Texas, it gets unbearably hot in the summer. I have had swimming lessons since I was 5 and have been on a swim team since I was 9. This happened a year ago, but I still remember it being one of the most crazy experiences I have ever had. Anyway, so our coach was making us a 100-meter IM. IM stands for individual medley, and we had 4 sets in the IM: butterfly, backstroke, breaststroke, and freestyle. Enter NK, nice kid. So I was about halfway through my set and did a type of turn called a flip turn. It's when you flip around at the wall to turn. I did my flip and splashed some water out of the pool. Mind you, it was a small amount. And as luck would have it, at this moment, Nice Kid was walking to his lane in the pool. He wasn't wet yet because his set was the one after mine, and I didn't see what happened then because I was still swimming, but I guess the water must have hit his foot and ankle. What I didn't realize was that the entitled mom was watching her kid walk to his lane. Understandable, as many parents at my swim meets like to cheer on their kids. So I finished my set and climbed out of the pool. As soon as I set foot on land, the entitled mom comes barreling through the crowd like a freight train. I have my back turned so I don't see that it's me she's coming for. The entitled mom grabs my shoulder and spins me around. Mind you, I'm still soaking wet. She then starts yelling, "Apologize!" For what? For attacking my kid, you, freak? What? Ma'am, I think you have the wrong... She cuts me off as entitled mothers do. Shut up and say sorry to my baby. Meanwhile, the nice kid is just standing there looking quite embarrassed. What do you mean? I saw you intentionally splash water on my son, which could have hurt him. Yeah, lady, water being splashed is going to cause a deadly injury. Ma'am, I had no control over the water hitting your son. It was an accident. Why do they even let fat people like you swim? This set me off. I'm a big person and I'm extremely self-conscious about my chest and stomach area. Hey, why don't you pack up your kid and get the heck out of here? No, apologize, you little... She then starts shoving me towards her kid and I shove back. Eventually, Nice Kid pulls his mother off me. Mom, leave him alone. He didn't do anything wrong. Let's just go. But, Mom, we're leaving now. Fine, sweetie, let's go. The nice kid mouths sorry as they walk out, and I wave at him. As the entitled mom looks at me one last time, I flip her off and walk to my parents to dry off. I told them the whole encounter, and they asked me if I wanted to find her and call the police. I said no, because if she gets arrested later on, it's basically Darwinism. This one is called Entitled Mother Tried to Steal My PlayStation, posted by Save Ferris Brother. This is the story of my cousin, who is the entitled parent in the story. Let's start with some backstory. When I was 17, I met the man who would become my husband. He was 18. I became really close with his older sister, who was divorced, and I watched her son, who was 9 when I met him, and 11 when this story takes place. He called me almost aunt, and I called him nearly nephew, and we had a great relationship. He always wanted to hang out with me, and I occasionally had him over to my parents' house for a sleepover when his mom needed a break or whatever. He was very into video games, so at one point I went out and bought a gaming system like his so he could play when he was over, and so I could get practice and get better at his favorite games. Hate to be schooled by a 10-year-old, right? My boyfriend was away at a university about 4 hours away, and I was going home to community college and working almost full time. My sister had moved out and gotten married, and my parents had let me convert her bedroom into a sitting room for myself. I'd won a TV through a contest at work, and I moved my computer table and desk into there, and I got a secondhand couch from someone at work who was moving. The 2 rooms were connected by a bathroom, and I got a cheap dorm-type fridge for my birthday for my parents when I turned 18 to complete the room. It was a very cool setup. Alas, it was not meant to last. My cousin, Dad's brother's daughter, was getting divorced and needed a place for her and her son, who was 10, to stay. We moved all my stuff into the unfinished basement. My dad threw up some temporary walls and a door to delineate my room, and they moved in. Kid in my room, cousin in my sister's room. I felt bad for Kay and tried to engage with him, but he wasn't anything like my nearly nephew. His parents were very religious and didn't let him watch much TV, play video games, or anything like that. I had some very G-rated games, no violence, that had come with my system, and his mom let him play those. He got hooked and would constantly go down to my room and want to play. Eventually, I moved the gaming system upstairs into a common area of the house so I could sleep in on weekends and not be constantly coming home to finding him sitting on my bed playing the game. It meant that I had to give up my gaming time. I had become a bit of a gamer chick, but I did end up getting more sleep and he seemed very happy. They were supposed to stay for 3 months and that turned into 6 and then 9. They finally moved out just a few days short of their 11th month anniversary with us on a Saturday. I was at work and then out with friends that night. The next day, I slept late and decided to move some of my stuff upstairs. I cleaned and then enlisted my dad for some of the heavy lifting. When I was almost done, I decided to hook up the TV and went down to grab the gaming system. It was gone, along with a few of my games and both of my controllers. I texted my cousin. I said, "Do you guys have my PlayStation?" "Yes." "Okay, but I didn't give it to you. I need it back. When's a good time for you to drop it off here?"
"You haven't played with it in months. Kay had been playing with it, so I figured you wouldn't miss it."
"Understood, but I do miss it and I want it back."
"But Kay enjoys it so much. He even bought 2 games for it with his birthday money."
"It's nice that he enjoys it. You should probably get him one of his own, but I still need mine back."
"It's not very ladylike for a girl your age to be playing video games anyway."
"It's not up to you to decide if I'm enough of a lady. It's not very ladylike to steal either, but here we are."
"There's no need to be rude. I'm not going to allow you to take his video games away from him."
"I'm not taking his video games away. You're returning my video games to me. He never actually had a gaming system for me to take away. He was using mine. You shouldn't have taken it in the first place."
"But he bought games for it. He used it all the time. As far as I'm concerned, you gave it to him. You never told us you'd want it back. You're the one who's trying to steal from a child."
"I'm coming up to my room all the time, so I moved it upstairs to my dad's TV. How is that giving it to him? I'm not arguing anymore. I want my gaming system back." She stopped responding after that. It took a few weeks, more text, and a phone call from my dad to her, a phone call from my dad to his brother, and me fighting with my parents who just wanted to let her have it but wouldn't buy me a new one. One controller was broken beyond repair, and the other never really worked right, but the system worked fine. My parents were PO'd at me that I cut her out of my life after that, but I just kept telling them that as soon as she apologized, I'd forgive her. I'm still waiting. Yo, just because I let you borrow something does not make it yours. I've been a gamer for like 30 years now, and never once in my life has this been a thing. Throughout all of these years and all the people I've known, this is not cool, man. You gotta get it back, you gotta do it right. It's not stealing from a child anyway. What a story, man. This story is called Entitled Dad Fakes a Medical Condition to Try and Get Free Shopping, posted by Hima B. So this happened a few weeks ago. It was a relatively quiet day at work. I was the only first aider in the shop. At this point in the shift, I was doing till resets across the store, like the tills in the pharmacy and the cafe, when I hear the call out come across the tannoy for a first aider. I rush down and find a middle-aged man and his son. The man is sitting limply in a chair, and so I instantly start to check on him. He's breathing, responsive, but is claiming to have severe chest pains. He begs for medical assistance, but refuses any of the help from myself as he doesn't believe I'm first aid trained. We're left no choice but to call for an ambulance. As we are asking him for all the information regarding his condition, he blurts out,
"I'm not effing talking to you, I want a paramedic."
"They're on the way, but we need to ask you questions for them to know what's wrong." The dad then proceeds to shut his eyes and goes limp. We follow procedure and get him on the floor and in the recovery position. After a bit of time passes, his eyes open again, and he begins to say he feels fine and wants to go do his shopping. I refuse to let him go as the ambulance is still on its way. He begins to get extremely agitated at this and eventually asks for a member of staff to grab his shopping for him. We agree, and he hands a list to a colleague and they go and gather his items. Eventually, the ambulance arrives and I tell them what I know, so they do their thing and I stand to the side as not to get in the way. A few minutes later, the colleague returns with the shopping and places it in front of the dad. The paramedics eventually gather their things and then turn to leave, and they inform us that the dad refused all their help and has stated he simply wants to get home and do his shopping. After they leave, the dad apologizes for wasting our time and asks to be served at a till. I take him to a closed one so I can ring him up myself, and also to keep an eye on him, as due to his behavior throughout the entire situation, I don't fully believe at this point that there was ever anything wrong with the dad. After scanning his shopping, I tell him his total and he begins to freak out over the
"Absurd prices!"
and starts screaming about how we
"Haven't taken off any discounts."
I don't remember exactly what he said, but he basically wanted us to knock off a bunch of discounts because of the hassle we put him through and how late he's going to be to whatever he was doing next. We refused. He swore, and then he left. And I put all of his shopping back on the shelves for the next 20 minutes. Obviously, I can't confirm he was faking any illness, but with how he acted, I think it was all a big ruse to get a discount. Some people. Look, man, all you have to do is ask nicely and see what kind of discounts the store offers. But when you go faking chest pains and then have to cover your tracks after that, I don't see things going very well after that one, do you? My mom wants to pay her rent with my money, posted by Brodeshire04. So me and my mom don't get along the best, and even less so over the past few months. To summarize a lot of things, my mom and dad are divorced, and my dad is remarried to a good woman who my mom loathes. And I'm usually caught in the middle of whatever arguments my mom starts. When I was younger, she had me diagnosed with high-functioning autism by taking me to a clinic, kicking me out of the room, and telling the doctor stories about my behaviors, which conveniently only existed when I was with people she didn't like. I've worked with my diagnosis and improved as a person because of it, but I'm still not sure if the label belonged. Fast forward to recently, and I've been thinking about moving to my dad's. Tensions aren't getting better between my mom and I, and she's had me enrolled in intensive counseling where all of my counselors have said I don't belong, and she gets defensive if anyone disagrees with her assessments. But the part where things really started getting bad came when my dad called my school asking some questions about what my schooling would look like if I lived with him. And the secretary called my mom and let her know this had happened. My mom started calling and texting me, telling me she was going to pick me up from school, drive over to my dad's town, and leave me there. I didn't respond and went on with my day. My mom's response was to unenroll me from the school district in hopes that it would ruin my progress and get me kicked out of my internship that I was in, and I found it through the school, so she thought if I wasn't in the school anymore, they'd have to fire me. My mom took me back to her house, and over the course of a week and a half, she broke my phone, disconnected the house phone, lied to the counselors, and screamed at me because in her mind, if I left, I'd be forcing her to live out of her car. She never hesitated to tell me that I didn't care about her or that my little brother secretly told her that he hated me. Luckily, some legality issues led to me not being unenrolled from the school, so I finally got to start going again. And on my 18th birthday, I left and got a ride to my dad's house in the city over. Now, though, I've come to learn that my mom was paying rent on her house using child support from my dad and my brother's dad, Social Security and disability money she was claiming in my name, as well as my brother's on top of her own Social Security. Me leaving should have been the end of it, but now she's taking me to court, trying to claim guardianship over me, and she's seeking to gain full control of all my assets. For those who aren't familiar with guardianship, it's basically a situation where an individual isn't capable of managing themselves and are in need of a guardian to help them function. It typically applies to older individuals or people with a condition that prevents them from taking care of themselves on any level. By no means am I as incapable as her agenda says. In a month away from her, I've gotten a beautiful classic car from a close friend and restored it to working order, not even spending $2,000 in total to get a reliable vehicle. And I'll be getting another car to work on later down the line. I've got my driver's license and insurance, I've kept my paid internship, and am planning to continue it through the school year. What my mom is doing is effectively taking my rights away to keep herself afloat. Even though this should have been my graduating year, I have to return next year to finish the credits I couldn't get because of a social skills course she forced me to repeat every year. My mom wants to claim Social Security and disability money in my name, and she's taking my dad to court to convince the court to renew the child support order because I'll still be a student. She has threatened a restraining order on me if I talk to my younger brother, but she wants to force me back into the household. It just sucks seeing the way she looks at me and hearing the tone she uses to talk about me. I can tell she has a hatred for me now, and I wish things are different. Could have I done things better? Whew, you can just hear that rage and anger building up because, wow, I was reading the comments and they were mentioning that this is a Britney Spears type of situation, which is something going on now that has her father that is basically ruling over her, even though she says that she's capable, and pretty much everybody else does too. So this situation's really rough, and I hope the OP is getting out of this completely. Entitled mother tried to take my friend's truck, stabbed him with a pocket knife when told no, and cops took her away kicking and screaming. Posted by Dat Poster Rick. Not my story, but that of a friend who authorized to post it here when I asked him. For starters, my friend owns a blue 05 Dodge Ram 1500. It's not the most reliable model of truck, but he's kept it in darn good shape and left it looking stock, save for some aftermarket alloy wheels. He tells me he was willed the truck from his grandfather when he passed away 7 years ago. Caleb isn't a mechanic, but learned how to do a lot of work on the truck himself. I even helped him redo the undercoating on it and buff polish the paint. This story takes place about 3 years ago. My friend tells me this was really the one and the only time he's dealt with an entitled parent. He described her as looking like a teapot, short and stout. So, from this point on, the entitled mother will be referred to as Teapot. For the sake of giving him a name, my friend in the story will be referred to as Caleb. Rewind 3 years, and our story begins at a local supermarket whose name rhymes with Stallmark. Caleb always goes out of his way to try and get as close of a parking space to the store as possible, and on this day, he managed to do so. He went in and did the bulk of his food shopping for the next couple of weeks, and everything seemed fine. But of course, now comes the enter Karen part of the story. Caleb was pushing his cart out when he saw an older woman trying to force open the rear door of the canopy on his truck, which is odd because you could clearly see inside that he didn't really have anything of value in it other than a few tools. She didn't seem to notice him until he was super close and said to her, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" Teapot jumped back like lightning struck, but then quickly started playing the little old lady card, though this woman was about 50 tops. She put her hand over her heart and said in an over-exaggerated way, "Oh dear, you shouldn't sneak up on people like that, young man." "Yeah, sure, what were you doing?" "I was just trying to get in my truck. I locked my keys inside by mistake and can't get in." "Lady, that is not your truck." "Yes, it is. I just got it last year." "Oh, really? Then what model is it?" It's 2010. Look just how clean and new it looks." "No, lady, that's an 05. I know this because it's my truck." Caleb then produced the keys and pressed the button on the fob to unlock the door. He said Teapot first went white and then red with anger. It's pretty much full stereotypical Karen after this.
Listen here, you little
"You don't deserve a truck this nice. It'd be a lot better for someone like my son. He's a local college student, you know, and he needs a nice shiny vehicle like this to get around in." "Are you loopy, lady? My truck isn't for sale, and even if it was, how much would you give me for it?" Teapot then started to look smug and pulled a checkbook from her purse. "I can give you $1,500 for it right now." Caleb facepalmed so hard that he said he hurt his nose. "Lady, my truck is worth several times that, and I've personally kept it up with its maintenance for several years. There's no way in heck I'd take $1,500 for it. Plus, there's no way I'd hand over the title unless I was paid with cash. I don't trust checks." Teapot moved to get up in his face, which was funny because he was a full foot taller than her. She was about to speak when Caleb silenced her with a loud, "Don't even think about it, lady. My truck isn't yours for the taking and never will be. Now leave me alone so I can unload my groceries in peace and go home." He then did his best to try to ignore Teapot as she began screaming and saying she'd call the police. Caleb then just yelled back, "Call them then." And she actually did. She pulled out an old flip phone and began fake crying while speaking with the other person on the other end. Caleb finished loading his groceries and locked the truck because he wasn't about to drive off with the police on their way. When the police arrived, Teapot actually flopped down onto the ground and started fake crying like a baby while flailing her arms and legs around and pointing at Caleb screaming, "He knocked me to the ground and stole my truck, and then he said he'd come back later and hurt my family. Arrest him now." The two police officers that showed up were an older man with a mustache and a younger one that Caleb said he guessed was a rookie because the younger cop was immediately getting ready to aim his taser when the older one stopped him so they could assess the situation first. Caleb raised both hands and calmly stated nothing Teapot said was true, and that she'd been harassing him since he caught her trying to break into his truck. Teapot, while still having a tantrum on the ground, yelled, "He's lying, arrest him!" The rookie officer spoke with Teapot while the mustached one spoke with Caleb. Since he was so close to the store, Caleb stated that he bet that the security cameras picked up the whole thing. It was at that point that Teapot gave up on her act and started screaming like a banshee while running at Caleb with the small pocket knife she pulled from her purse. Caleb tried to back away and held his hands up, and the knife went right through his left palm, which he described to me as one of the most painful things he'd ever felt. She pulled the knife out and tried to stab him again when the rookie tackled her to the ground and tased her. Teapot flailed around and started screaming and sobbing like a baby. When she finally stopped moving, the mustached officer cuffed her while the rookie called for an ambulance. Teapot was loaded into the police cruiser, kicking and screaming, "Help! Police brutality! Someone help me!" Caleb was taken to the hospital and to attend to the stab wound in his hand. Turns out he was incredibly lucky as the knife had gone right between the bones and not damaged any tendons. Later in court, Teapot actually tried to plead not guilty, but the evidence against her was overwhelming, and she was charged with attempted murder, attempted grand theft auto, and a few other things. The judge sentenced her to be put in a mental facility because clearly she was not well. As soon as that happened, Teapot flipped out and began trying to charge at the judge, but she was quickly grabbed by the guards and hauled out of the courtroom. Also, during the trial, Caleb met Teapot's son. Turns out he'd gone no contact with her as soon as he was old enough to move out because she was the most controlling and overbearing mother you could imagine. And ever since then, she'd been trying to show up at his apartment and bring him some nice things that he suspected that she'd stolen just to try and get him to talk to her. Guess she figured Caleb's truck would have gotten her back in her son's good graces or something. This story is getting written now because Caleb decided to check up on Teapot by searching her name online. She's still at the mental facility, and he found out from her son through social media that she looks to likely be staying there for quite some time to come. Thanks for watching the compilation. If you made it this far, comment the secret phrase, "Hi Austin," below. Check out the next compilation here, and I'll see you there.